Welcome, my darling pretties, to our Beyond the Dawn of Business podcast for pretty empowered female entrepreneurs. It's time to step into your power, pretties. Lift each other, support the squad, and choose a life filled with the autonomy and freedom to live your dreams. I'm your host, Dawn Beth, owner and founder of Beyond the Dawn digital business brand and agency. My coffee is hot and my eyelashes are on, so we are ready to go. Hi and welcome to this episode. Today I want to talk to you about something that is really, really close to my heart. It's something that I think we all could do with having a think about, and something that perhaps you may not have considered yourself as a business owner before. Now, I don't want to start every single one of my podcast episodes with a disclaimer, but it feels like at the moment that's what I'm doing. But I just want to introduce the concept before we get started and really digging into this particular theme of radical responsibility. Now, radical responsibility is something that I've heard a lot over my years as being an entrepreneur. It's not something that I heard a lot when I was in the corporate world, which is actually quite funny because radical responsibility in a corporate setting would be so super useful. And I'm sure that some corporations do use that terminology. But for me, radical responsibility is something that's really kind of been brought home by my gorgeous friend, Fran Excel. And although I'd heard the term and I was already executing the behaviours of radical responsibility, there's been some really key conversations that we've had just as friends that have totally enlightened me to a new wave and a new kind of level of radical responsibility. So a massive shout out to my gorgeous friend Fran for kind of being another just amazing light and inspiration in my life, so that it allows me to share these messages with you guys and all of my audience and all of my pretties and even my friends and family, because this is one of those things that actually you can have a really amazing conversation with people who you know and love. Also, it doesn't have to be a business thing. Radical responsibility is a game changer for lots of different people, lots of different scenarios, lots of different situations. And the reason why I'm bringing awareness to radical responsibility right at the very beginning of this episode is because this episode is intended to be a loving check-in with yourself. I say loving because it can be really difficult sometimes to be introduced to an idea that perhaps makes you consider the perception of yourself differently. Might not be super comfortable for you to consider yourself in a certain way. But if we can find ways to check ourselves, to regulate how we are behaving, to make sure that we are being the highest version of ourselves and we are representing ourselves in a way that makes us proud at the end of the day, that's really like one of the most beautiful things. And most of the people that I know, most of the people that I come into contact with in the entrepreneurial space, in the business owner space, we all have this kind of love for self-development. We have this amazing kind of awareness of being lifetime learners. We have real commitment to being the best versions of ourselves and finding ways to ensure that we are growing as people and that we're doing great things for our communities, as well as, growing for ourselves and our families. And today I ask you to just have a little bit of an open mind in regards to your own behaviour. This is not about calling anybody out. This is not about anybody specifically. This is something that I want you to listen to and apply to yourself, not necessarily judge anybody else on. If you can find a way to do that, I think that this would be beneficial for you. If you take the themes in today's podcast and try to apply them in a judgmental way to somebody else, that's not going to be good for you. It's not going to help you in any way. It's not going to create any change in the industry. All it does is create bad vibes, and we don't need that. We don't need to do that. So often when we see behaviours that we perhaps don't agree with or we don't like in the industry, the only good thing I think that you can do with that is to turn that inward, to have that be an inward conversation with yourself. Like, do I display those behaviors? Do I do that? Can I change that? Am I guilty of that? Why would I do that? What's the motivation? Even if you did something accidentally, like, how did I accidentally fall into that trap? So in the female entrepreneurial space, one of the most beautiful vibes that we have is this feeling of lifting each other up. We lift each other up, we reach back, we help other people in the industry, we give value, we do things together. And I always feel like it is an extension of the old adage that it takes a village to raise a child, because we have these businesses, whether they're digital businesses or physical in-person businesses, we have them and they mean a lot to us. And you know, we treat them like our digital babies. We treat them like something that is incredibly important to us and our lives. And for those of us that do have family or children, they are the things that often take us away from our families and children, you know, when we're really, really busy or we're just in build mode and we're working and hustling and trying to get things off the ground. Now, with all that in mind, the whole idea of it takes a village is that we help each other and support each other. And if you've ever gotten behind an initiative that is, you know, women empower women, support small businesses, you know, all of those types of themes, those are the themes that really speak quite highly to us in terms of our sole purpose. They mean a lot to us. They also mean so much to the people on the other side of them. Today, I received the most beautiful voice note. I jumped into a positive psychology catch-up last night with my amazing alumni ladies, other positive psychology coaches, and we literally had 30 minutes together. That was the only time. And a couple of questions came up around marketing and selling, and I gave my opinion. And, you know, these things, they just accumulate in my brain and then spill out of my mouth quite often. And I really enjoyed the small amount of time that we had together. And then today I got this amazing voice note from one of the ladies that had been in the session, just thanking me for what I'd said and basically bringing an acknowledgement to the value she felt I'd added to the session. And she used the term, said that I was like really clear and articulate, and it just made me smile ear to ear, because it was just the sweetest, kindest, most beautiful voice message for me to receive. And there was nothing behind it other than just one amazing woman supporting another woman, and from the business sense, kind of giving me a bit of a thumbs up, like, you did good, kid. And that was such an amazing thing. And I you know, it touched me in a wonderful way. It made me feel so happy, and it was just such a joyful, lovely thing to experience. Now, I would love to sit here and kind of suggest that you find somebody today to go and pay that forward to and to do something similar. I definitely am going to. But this is not kind of the only thing that we can be doing to support each other. There are other and somewhat more practical things that we can be doing to prove what we are saying we are, in terms of being exceptional supporters of other small businesses, exceptional supporters of other people in the entrepreneurial space. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. This is where we're going to have to look at ourselves a little bit. And again, without judgment, but only with the intention of being better and doing more, can we regulate the things and behaviours that we do that perhaps are not in alignment with suggesting that we are small business supporters or women empowering women. So one of the things I'd love you to consider and think about, if you've ever done this, again, try not to go into a judgmental space and try not to pinpoint somebody who's done this to you, because that just creates a negative spiral. But think about it from your point of view. If you've ever done this, have you ever contacted somebody to work with them and asked for more information about what it is that they're doing, received an opportunity to speak to them about it further, or received an opportunity to go ahead and work with them with all the details laid out for you, whether that's an informal, casual chat, voice notes or messages that have gone in the DMs, or whether it's a formal email or proposal that's come over. Have you ever done that and then ghosted that person on the other side? You can't hear it, but I'm smiling, because I think if we were being truly honest, we have at some point, all of us, done that. We've all seen something, or we've been connected to somebody, and in the moment we've been interested in working with them, and we've reached out and we've asked for more information, or we've started a conversation and we've gone back and forth with that person, or we have just plainly, as soon as they've delivered the information, gone quiet and never spoken to them again. Now, when you're on that side of the situation, like you've only asked for info, right? You've only started a conversation. There's no obligation for you to buy, and that's not what I'm suggesting here. However, when you're on the other side, I'm going to flip that now. When you're on the other side of that person today has taken time out of their business to contact you with all of the information. 9 times out of 10, that information that's being sent over to you will have been delivered to you in a bespoke way. Very, very rare that somebody would have a script that they can just copy and paste and throw in. 9 times out of 10, it is going to be, an individual message or email or proposal. And the time that's taken, whether it is 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 50 minutes, or 2 hours, depending on the level of professionalism, that comes across depending on what you've asked for, that's time that has been costed to their day. Like, that has been taken out of their day. That's an investment in you, in a potential client, that has been taken out of their efficiencies. And yes, there's no monetary scale for that right now, but if they have overheads, or if they have team, or if they have any of those things that they have to look into, even just their own time, you could attribute a cost to that. Now, if you're sat there thinking, actually, Dawn, I have done that and I didn't mean to cause any harm, of course, nobody intends for it to be that way. However, how often have you done it? If you've done it a couple of times and it's just something that's happened, then fair enough, it's quite normal. It happens. I 100% know that whoever the person is on the other side is not going to be horrendously offended. We know that it happens. It's cool. But if you are a serial offender, and only you can know this, and this is where the radical responsibility comes in. If you are a serial offender and you do this regularly, you're not supporting those businesses. You are detracting and taking away resources that could be given somewhere else. If you know that you have no intention of working with that person, or if you know that this is a behavior that you're kind of dealing with, that you need to know all the information because you feel like you can learn from the information, but you actually have no desire to actually work with that person, then you are taken away from that person's business. It's just a simple thing that you are doing that might not be helping that other person out. Okay. So it is a situation that open and honestly we can look at together and figure out, actually, before I send this message, before I have that conversation, I'm just going to make sure that I'm definitely interested, and I'm going to sit on this for 15 minutes. I'm going to think about it for 10 minutes before I just impulsively take up somebody's time. I'm going to make sure that I am having the right conversation and I'm not just being impulsive. Or equally, if you get the information and the information provides you the opportunity to make a decision, don't be scared of going back and saying, thank you so much for that information. I really appreciate you taking the time to pass that over to me. after reviewing it, this isn't the right time for me. I'm not going to be able to go forward with this, or thank you very much. It's going to be a no from me right now. Like, the worst thing about ghosting somebody is that that person on the other side doesn't know what's happening next. And for those of us that are incredibly conscientious when it comes to how we present our sales, the way that we present our invitations to work with us, we don't want to be hounding you. We don't want to be going through our DMs 3 days later and going, hey, I sent you this information and I still haven't heard back. Like, what's going on? It just really doesn't feel good. It's not joyful. And 9 times out of 10, like so many of my clients, when we've had this discussion, if they send the information and nothing comes back, they're not coming back to that message. The other thing is as well, that this is not the only way you could accidentally be stealing resources from a business. Many, many times we will go down the route of conversations with people and we will take up their time in terms of collaborating, or, for instance, do you want to be on my podcast? Do you want to be a guest? Like, when are you available? And then those emails or text messages end in no result. And it's the same thing, tiny, tiny little efficiencies that get lost in what I can only call admin spend. Like, it's just random moments, random admin spend. Now, for the businesses that I've worked with to create strict operational frameworks so that there isn't money, energy, and resources being bled out in these areas, what tends to happen is there becomes a higher level of qualification within people who want to work with you. So there might be a quiz or a questionnaire or something that blockades that immediate contact. And don't get me wrong, this works really, really well. And lots of companies use it. And we've got a couple of stages that we do with ours as well. And it can work really, really well. But for somebody who works in human-to-human connection and using the digital space to have real, genuine relationships, it hurts my heart a little bit to have to look at the operational side and say, yep, like 6 hours this month was spent on discovery calls, or was spent on DMs, or was spent on writing up really coherent proposals or contracts to send out that didn't turn into anything, that didn't have any, didn't turn into fruition. So when you're thinking about that kind of stuff, like, do you still want to have a situation where you can chat to people and be casual and have those great conversations? Because if you do, then being a little bit more strict with yourself and making sure that you're not working just on impulse for those conversations may help us to preserve that possibility for the way in which we want to work. You do not owe anybody anything, okay? So if you slip into somebody's DMs and you're like, oh my gosh, Dawn, I love the idea of being in the mentorship, for instance, that's cool. And if I send you the details and I'm like, I would love for you to join us because you're the perfect fit, and here's the links and how do you feel and all of that good stuff. If you come back to me and you're like, oh man, I've looked at this and it's just not for me, that's totally cool. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you're kind of like, oh, I'm not going to reply to this person in case they might try to sell to me, or they might try to persuade me, or they might try to push me over the edge, that's not a joyous place to be. That, again, comes from a place of scarcity. It comes from a place of lack. It comes from a place of fear. And what I would love to invite you to do is to consider if that's the way you feel about that person, like if that's the way that you are worried that they will behave, are they the right person for you to work with anyway? If I send this message and they send me the details and I'm too scared to reply back to them yes or no, for fear that they may try to persuade me or force me or coerce me, then you don't really want the details from that person to begin with, right? They're not the right person for you to work with. those tiny little things can be massive, massive supports to the businesses that you actually truly love and adore and want to support. We talk all the time about the ways that we can support each other in terms of like sharing each other's social media content, liking, loving, sharing to our stories, shout outs, giving love notes in whatever form, giving testimonials in whatever form, referrals. All of these things are so amazing for just supporting the people who you know and love in this industry, in this business, the people that you're networked to. It might be your mastermind sisters. It might be somebody who you've been wanting to work with for a long time and admire. Like, these are all beautiful things. But there are things that we can do that I'd like to kind of give a name to, which is almost like a silent, unintentional sabotage to other businesses that are around us. And this is one of them. This is one of the things. And I think it's more prevalent in 2022 than in previous years. I've had a couple of experiences myself where this has happened. But I think the best thing that we can do, especially right now, especially in the climate, especially whilst there is so much stuff going on that could create for us those feelings of fear and scarcity that may make you want to run away and hide. Those things that may want you, that, you know, you send that message and then you go, oh my gosh, actually this scares the bejesus out of me. So I'm just not going to reply to Dawny. I'm just not going to say anything. I'm not even going to let her know that I've read it. I'm just going to pretend that I don't no longer exist and hide under my bed. Those things that are happening, they create for you this feeling of fear that stops you from having an open conversation. And I would invite you to work on that. And this is where the radical responsibility comes in. Like, work on that conversation, work on your comfort level in saying thank you, but no thank you. Because I promise you, for every single person that you reach out to, every single person that you think to yourself, actually, I might want to work with this person, that you go back and say no thank you to, you're doing them a massive favour. It's so much easier to have a no thank you and to know where you stand than it is to have a nothing and to not know where you stand, or, you know, for it to go even further and then for it to break down towards the end. Occasionally, things will totally happen that are somewhat out of your control. Like, you might have an amazing idea to work with somebody and you might get to the final stage where it's all paperwork and contracts and all of that. And then something happens and it just can't go ahead. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about almost like multiple kind of dating techniques. Like, if you were to juggle date and going around asking everybody for advice, asking everybody for discovery calls, asking everybody for more information, if you have no intention of working with the person, it's just taking away resources from other people. And like I say, if you had every intention of working with that person and then the details come through and it's not for you, just say. I had a client recently that when we looked at their operational side of things over the last 12 months, there had been multiple times where massive amount of time and energy had been spent. And what tends to happen when you get to that level and you're looking at how much you've lost, like, that person could have been doing something different in that time. And it's a little bit like, one of my girls in the office today was talking about a similar situation where a friend wanted to see them, and then they kept the day clear to see the friend, and then they never heard back from the friend, so they didn't know whether they were free to do other things or whether they were supposed to wait for the friend to contact them back. It's the exact same thing. Like, if I know I'm not seeing you today, I can go off and make other plans. I can go off and do other things. But if you leave people in that area of limbo, it will start to make a difference to them in terms of what time they've spent. And if we all did that to each other regularly, we would put each other out of business. It is just the way it is. You know, if we did that and we created situations where it was happening quite regularly, those efficiencies were being lost, that admin spend was coming out every single month, we could create for ourselves real difficulties in terms of our cash flow, and also just in terms of our our efficiencies within our business. You just bleed energy as much as money, although money definitely also, yes. So when you're thinking about that and you're thinking about ways that you can perhaps support that, think about those behaviors in yourself. Because that big company that I was just telling you about, one of my clients that we were looking at their efficiencies, when we looked back at the 12 months, so much had been lost that the people who had approached had been red flagged. And everybody loves my DNR list. I don't know if you've heard me speak of this before. I speak about it all the time. I do have a DNR list. My DNR stands for do not respond. That's not to suggest that you can't reach out to me and that you can't have conversations with me if you're not going to buy from me. Of course, I have multiple areas of free resources, this podcast being one of them. And I have areas, I have a free group, and I have loads of freebies on my website and lots of fun stuff that you can consume. You can be part of my world and part of my audience and be very loved, cherished, and me have mad gratitude for you, even if you've never spent a penny with me. But there are times when there are people who perhaps want to work with us, but do not have either the inclination, the energy, or the finances to do so. And everybody's heard the term like mood hoover or energy vampire. And the people who do it often don't mean to do it. They often don't know that they're doing it. But you do have to at some point have kind of a strict boundary in your businesses, because we can't give everything away for free. We can't be on discovery calls that are an hour and a half long where we give all of the information. It's also not prudent when we have happy, joyfully paying clients who also value what we give, to be able to give so much away and for it never to, become fruitful and have that equal energy exchange. Like, that's what the beautiful thing about when somebody buys from you. It's not necessarily just about the money. It's about the equality in you are providing me value. I am providing you this amazing financial energy. And that's a transaction that's on equal ground, which is a beautiful thing. So you need that kind of equality. But for those people who perhaps have, asked for a lot and not taken themselves to the next level, there is a point where you start to enable somebody who perhaps is just there for the free hors d'oeuvres. And those people lovingly get put on my DNR list, on my do not respond list. That is my polite way of saying that these people have had support, they've had love, they've had, pinpointed to free resources. They are not at the place where they are ready to work with me for whatever reason, multiple different reasons. Sometimes we're not the right fit. Sometimes it's the finances aren't there. Sometimes the energy isn't there. Sometimes the motivation to do what truly needs to be done isn't there. It doesn't matter. There's 100 different reasons why somebody will be a perfect fit and 100 different reasons why somebody might not. But those red flag lists, those DNR lists, if you're serious about your business, if you're serious about your personal growth, if you're serious about working with people that inspire you, those peers that just light you up, that that can help you, that can create those opportunities for you to really thrive in your business, you don't want to be on that person's do not respond list or red flag list. Because the next time you reach out, it's a little bit like the boy that cried wolf. The next time you reach out, and you may be ready at this point, it's very unlikely that you're going to be given that opportunity to work with that person, because you will have already have taken up so many resources that actually on the other side, they're looking at everything strategically and they have to manage their time accordingly. And for the people who perhaps haven't ghosted them or haven't done that kind of Benny Hill chasing around the trees, That's a good analogy. They'll go to those people first. They'll go to those people. Those opportunities won't naturally come to you. The filtration system of the availability of working with those people might be much reduced. And that would be such a loss. Again, this isn't for judgment. So if you're sat here thinking, oh crap, I've done that, I'm not wanting you to feel bad about it. I don't want you to use this as a stick to beat yourself with, darlings. Everybody at some point has done it to some degree. But if you're sat there and you're thinking to yourself, eesh, I have done that and I did not understand the impact on the other side, then let this just be an awakening moment of that radical responsibility for how you conduct yourself and how your highest self would behave. And if this isn't a behavior that your highest self would embody, then perhaps we could support each other and empower each other by dropping this particular behavior. Because I promise you, if every single one of us made a pledge not to do that anymore, there would be a lot more in the way of efficiencies and monies not being lost, no admin spend being tirelessly kind of bled out from companies that we admire and love. And we would all be able to support each other in a completely different way, but in the best possible way to thrive together. I hope this one has been a bit of food for thought. I would love to know how you feel about this. Obviously, if you want to speak to me anonymously, you can absolutely do that. You do not have to admit if you've ever done it. There'll be no judgment from me, my darlings, but do consider it. Have a think about it. Have a think about your behaviors. Have a think about the way that you work. Is there something here that could be changed for the good of us all? If you're loving our Pretty podcast, come on over to Social Pretties, our online safe house and sisterhood community. It's a safe space where female entrepreneurs connect and thrive in a warm, welcoming fold of pretty amazing women. You'll find an easy redirect in the description, and I can't wait to see you in there. And depending on where you're listening right now, we would love it if you would click subscribe or follow so that you can be the first to know when our new podcasts come out.